They called a house of faith, a Muslim family kept tightly by tradition. But one wife's hidden affair would shatter everything, igniting a chain of jealousy, lies, and blood. It began as a secret love between a devoted wife and her powerful father-in-law. But when their forbidden affair was finally exposed, anger became violence. By sunrise, 2 lives would be lost in a deadly confrontation that destroyed the family forever. Don't miss the shocking true crime stories hiding behind closed doors. Subscribe now to follow every twist and revelation. Samira Hussein always woke hours before the rest of her husband's family. Dawn cast soft, angular light through the kitchen window as she brewed cardamom tea and listened for the quiet noises that signaled a household about to stir. For those on the outside, her life in the Hussein villa seemed almost storybook. A close-knit London neighborhood, a brick house buzzing with laughter and prayer, evenings spent with the extended family gathered around a table piled high with fragrant curries and fresh roti. But behind the hush of sunrise and the drone of family obligations, Samira existed in constant tension, her nerves stretched tight with secrets. At 28, she wore her resignation lightly. Friends admired her discipline, the way she remembered birthdays and solved disputes. Older women trusted her to manage crises, and young ones envied her apparent contentment. Yet no one knew she barely slept at all. Her marriage to Imran, 5 years prior, had begun with hope. The nikah was celebrated with hundreds of guests, and Imran was intelligent, ambitious, quick to share a private joke. They spoke of travel, a life of meaning, children. But soon Imran became consumed by work, chasing the next big property deal. His absences grew longer, and his affection faded into routine. He left the management of the household, and, increasingly, his aging father, to Samira. Imran's father, Tariq Hussein, was a force of nature. 60, broad-shouldered, bearing the marks of a lifetime fighting for every ounce of success. Men in the community called him Haji Sahib, a mark of respect and authority. At home, he was equally feared and beloved, running the family with a firm but mostly fair hand. He expected discipline. He noticed failure. For months, Samira and Tariq had an easy rapport, fostered by evenings when Imran was out, and they'd find themselves sharing tea in the winter garden or talking in hushed tones while the family watched TV. They bonded over small things. Her love of poetry, his old stories from Karachi, their mutual frustration at being misunderstood by the younger generation. Tariq would linger in the kitchen, his advice always teetering between kindness and command. What drew them closer wasn't just chemistry or loneliness. It was a collision of unmet needs, the kind neither community gossip nor family politics could forgive. When Tariq first reached for Samira's wrist, helping her retrieve a plate dropped by accident, she felt electric shame rattle through her. He apologized and glanced away, but the air between them thickened. It began simply. Nightly texts, safe at first, "Did you eat?" or "Thank you for the tea." Then, late one night, a message that read only, "I see you." Samira's hands had trembled, not with fear, but with hunger for connection. The next day, Tariq left a book of Urdu poetry on the kitchen counter. Inside, a slip of paper with his favorite passage, marked for the one who understands. She read and hid the note in her pillowcase, heart pounding with both excitement and dread. All the while, Samira performed perfection, cooking, mediating, smiling at relatives' jokes, downplaying the chills she felt when Tariq's gaze lingered too long. The other women in the house, Imran's mother Farah and 2 sisters, were accustomed to Tariq's aloofness, but Samira noticed small things. The way he brought her tea just as she was finishing a call with her parents, the way he always knew when to find her alone. When Farah noticed the difference, Samira's rehearsed lies saved her. "Tariq worries about my homesickness," she'd say. "He just reminds me life can be happy anywhere." And Imran, ever the busy businessman, remained oblivious. "Samira keeps everyone happy," he'd tell friends. "She was the best thing I ever did for this family." But the secret grew, fed by risk and repetition. By autumn, Tariq and Samira's texts had become an hourly ritual. They met in the garage late at night, windows fogged, speaking in code, always one ear trained for footsteps. In these moments, he dropped his mask, told her stories about immigration, heartbreak, and mistakes he swore never to repeat. She told him her fears. What if she never became a mother? What if she was only ever someone's solution, not someone's desire? One rainy Sunday, when the house emptied out for a wedding nearby, Tarek offered Samira a ride to get groceries. Instead, they detoured to his modest office a few blocks away. There, surrounded by dusty ledgers and black and white family portraits, they crossed a boundary neither could uncross. The first kiss was awkward, urgent, a dangerous prayer. They spoke no words as they stumbled together. They understood full well what they were risking. Afterward, Samira saw herself in the mirror. Hair mussed, scarf loosened, makeup smudged, and felt both terrified and unmistakably alive. Tarek, too, seemed changed, softer, yet more demanding, as if daring her to run from what they'd done. From that day forward, everything in the house felt charged. Even simple dinners became a minefield. Farah watching Samira's every smile, Imran noticing the growing rift between his father and wife, the youngest sister catching certain glances that seemed too intimate. Samira tried to remain invisible, doubling down on chores, overperforming kindness. Still, rumors began to circulate. A cousin visiting for Eid swore she saw Samira leave the kitchen one night just as Tarek entered. An elderly neighbor mentioned the strange tension she sensed during Friday prayers. Imran grew restless, sleepwalking through the halls, clutching his phone, searching for clues in Samira's call log that weren't there. During Ramadan, at the height of their passion and fear, Tarek whispered promises. "Soon, we disappear together. I'll support you anywhere. This house is no prison if we stand together." Samira wanted to believe him, but her faith warred with her longing. Every secret rendezvous was followed by hours of guilt, prayers for forgiveness, and the knowledge that tradition was closing in on them. It happened quickly, after months of evasion. Samira had borrowed Tarek's phone to send a grocery list, forgetting to delete a thread of heartfelt messages. That night at dinner, Imran's anger boiled over. Plates shattered, accusations ricocheted, Farah wailed, and Samira, for the first time, didn't try to explain. Everything she'd suppressed surfaced. Tears, confessions, apologies too late to matter. The rest of the family scattered, siblings rushing to a neighbor's house, Farah frantically calling her eldest brother. Within an hour, the villa was a fortress, doors locked, words as sharp as knives. And so night fell, grim and restless, on a house that had kept so many secrets for so long. In the dark, Samira sat on the edge of her bed, listening to footsteps pacing on the floor above. Her heart raced with fear, regret, and disbelief. How had passion led her here, to the edge of ruin? Down the hallway, Tarek did the same, hands shaking as he reviewed what he destroyed. By dawn, the house would never be the same. But for now, anticipation hung over every movement. A silence heavy with the knowledge that truth, once spoken, could not be unsaid. The fallout from that Friday night dinner echoed through every hallway of the Hussein villa. In the morning, the smell of burned paratha hung in the air, Samira's hands shaking as she cooked, her every move shadowed by the previous night's chaos. Chairs had been knocked over, the tablecloth twisted in Imran's clenched fists, Farah's sobs still ringing in Samira's ears like a curse she could not wash away. Officially, no one spoke of what had happened. But the silence now was dangerous, tense, broken only by sharp footsteps and the creak of doors closing too hard. Imran confined himself to his office upstairs, blinds drawn against daylight. Occasionally, he'd appear in the communal living room, eyes bloodshot, muttering into his phone, only to retreat again without a word to his wife or father. The sisters tiptoed around Samira, no longer seeking her advice. Their once open faces shuddered with suspicion. Downstairs, Tarek kept busy with home repairs, a leaking tap, a squeaky door, pointless chores meant to disguise the fact that his world was cracking. Yet he checked his phone every few minutes, waiting for reassurance from Samira, desperate for any sign she hadn't already left him behind out of self-preservation. That Sunday stretched thin and endless. The villa transformed into a house of half-truths and fearful calculation. News traveled quickly among relatives, though no one, not even Farah, gave voice to the worst of their fears. Instead, a constant stream of WhatsApp messages flickered. Vague congratulations for family events, condolences for distant deaths, and beneath these, the subtle code of a community on the edge of scandal. Samira spent hours cleaning already spotless counters, organizing cupboards alphabetically, folding and refolding clothes, as if order could protect her from the chaos she had helped unleash. Each time she heard footsteps, her heart quickened. She expected confrontation, or perhaps something worse. How quickly the world narrows, she thought, when you become both the betrayer and the betrayed. Late in the morning, Farah summoned Samira to the prayer room. The older woman sat cross-legged on a prayer rug, rosary beads moving steadily through her fingers. "Pray with me, Beta," she whispered, voice tight from too many tears. The two women bowed beside each other, chanting supplications for mercy, guidance, strength. But for Samira, every word was another stone in her stomach. She wept silently, trying to remember which mistake had been the first that led them here. After prayer, Farah caught her wrist. "Whatever happens, you must protect our family's name. Shame cannot cross these walls. You understand?" Samira nodded, though the words both froze and emboldened her. She wondered if Farah knew more than she'd said. If a mother's love meant forgiveness or quiet but ruthless retribution. Either way, Samira's fate was now inseparable from theirs. Across the house, Tariq too felt the pressure mounting. His authority, which had seemed unshakable for decades, was now a fragile thing. At the breakfast table, he tried to reassert order, discussing bills, reminding the children of chores, asking Imran about work. Imran answered without looking up, voice stripped of warmth. Every interaction felt like the first move in a deadly chess match where everyone had already lost. In desperation, Tariq sent Samira a carefully worded message. "We must talk. I can fix this. You are not alone." For the rest of the afternoon, Samira lived in dread of the next steps. Imran had cornered her by the bathroom door earlier, voice dangerously low. "Did you ever love me?" She tried to answer, deflected, choked back tears. I do. But he cut her off, rage and heartbreak bleeding together. "You destroyed us. You've shamed everyone." Guilt flared, but somewhere inside her, anger too. "Love is not obedience, Imran." I was suffocating. He'd recoiled as if struck, slamming the door between them. Tariq watched all of this, every sharp word and tearful glance, pretending not to take sides, but panic simmered behind his habitual calm. He knew the stigma Samira, and by extension, he himself, would bring upon the family if their truth left these walls. The risk wasn't only personal. It was communal, reputational, and, in the worst case, criminal. Sunday evening, the family fractured entirely for the first time. Imran refused to join for dinner, remaining locked in his study, ignoring the plates left outside his door. Farah barely touched her food. Tariq tried to bridge the divide with small talk, all energy gone from his usual commanding presence. At 9:30 p.m., Tariq sent Samira another message. In the garden. 10 minutes. Shrouded and shivering, she slipped quietly into the backyard. The almond tree was blooming in the dusk, and the chill in the air was sharp, but their voices were lower still, breath mixing in the half-dark. Tariq's urge was urgent. Fear thinly veiled as hope. "We go tonight," he said. "Imran cannot be reasoned with. I have cash, friends who can help us disappear. I will not let you be punished for my mistakes." Samira's voice shook. "They'll find us. We will never be free." He took her hand. "I promise you, Samira, I will protect you. I have lived through war. This is nothing compared." She almost believed him. But both were so nervous, neither noticed the figure behind the kitchen curtains. Imran, face pale, watching the scene. When Samira crept upstairs later, a message arrived from Imran. "I know where you've been. Tomorrow, everyone will know." The text sent ice through her blood. She lay awake, heart pounding. She heard Imran on the phone, heard Tariq's heavy steps pacing below, and Farah quietly crying. Midnight approached. The house felt more like a bunker than a home. Samira replayed every sign she'd missed. Every warning look, every urgent plea in Farah's voice telling her to keep the shame out. She realized too late how much she'd underestimated Imran's rage and his willingness to act. She tucked her passport and what money she could find beneath her pillow, hands trembling until morning. Across the hall, Tarek did the same. He threw essentials into a worn duffel, made a final call to his oldest friend, "Be ready," and peered at the garden for any sign of Samira's escape. As the soft light of dawn crept into the villa, the house sat silent, but for the anxious breaths of its inhabitants, each braced for the next eruption. At that moment, escape and survival were not the same thing. Every room in the house was a trap, and deep down, everyone felt it. The next day would see anger sharpen into threat. The path to violence, once unimaginable, now felt inevitable. And Samira stood in her window, exhausted and afraid, realizing that the hardest part was not what might come, but how little of herself she recognized anymore. An ordinary morning crept over the Hussein villa, but inside, the air was anything but calm. Breakfast sat untouched on the table, the quiet broken only by the ticking clock and Farah's muffled weeping behind her bedroom door. Tension had replaced routine, gone were the shared smiles and jokes that once tethered the family together. Now, every footstep and closed door vibrated with accusation. Samira watched sunlight slide in slats across the floor, dust motes swirling like ghosts. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a message from an unknown number. "Tell Tarek to leave, or secrets become news." Her hand shook. She deleted the message instantly, hoping it was just an empty threat. But fear burrowed deeper. It was as if 1,000 eyes watched her every move. Imran's rage had become methodical. He barely slept, scrolling messages, checking bank accounts, trying to piece together the full scope of betrayal. The humiliation burned steady in his gut, a gnawing hunger for something, anything, that looked like justice. He had called his oldest friend, Qasim, in the middle of the night. "Just be ready," was all he said. "Tomorrow it ends." Meanwhile, Tarek lived on borrowed time. He spent the morning making phone calls from his locked study. His connections, so reliable for decades, now hesitated. "This is your mess, Tarek Bhai," one old associate finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "Families like ours don't survive stories like this. Fix it quietly, or you'll both fall." By noon, whispers had reached the mosque. Imran's cousin, a lanky teenager with ideas about everything, claimed he'd overheard something at Friday prayers. "Uncle Imran's house, there's been real drama." Within hours, rumors were ripe. Something about money stolen, a scandal, maybe even violence. Farah, blinded by the magnitude of shame, locked doors and refused to answer calls. Desperation painted every choice. Samira texted Tarek, "He knows. There's no time. We need to go." Tarek answered, "Tonight. I'll be ready at midnight." "Back garden." Samira nodded to herself, almost relieved. A decision, however hopeless, was better than the crawling terror of inaction. She packed a small bag, passport, 3 sets of clothes, what little cash she could find, her wedding jewelry shoved deep beneath a tangle of scarves. Each item felt like both weapon and confession. The rest of the day ticked by in a daze. Imran emerged at odd intervals to stalk the halls, eyes red-rimmed and wild, barking into his phone. Farah followed after, murmuring prayers, clutching at his sleeve. Samira stayed out of their path, flinching at raised voices, occupying herself with the children and chores. They were the only ones who didn't know what was happening, a bubble of innocence that made her ache. Sunset brought a thunderstorm. Rain battered the windows, wind howling against the roof. The entire house seemed to rattle, as if warning them of the violence brewing inside. During Maghrib prayer, the power flickered. Darkness rushed in, shrinking their world to the flicker of candlelight and phone screens. That night, the final confrontation inched closer, every room a stage, every shadow a threat. After putting the children to sleep, Samira's heart hammered as she waited for midnight, counting each creak in the hall, each footfall. She checked the window every few minutes, searching for Tarek's silhouette beneath the almond tree. Downstairs, Farah paced back and forth, muttering supplications under her breath. "May Allah forgive our sins. May He protect us," she repeated, voice thin. At 11:45, Samira edged toward the back door, shoes in hand, scarf loose around her shoulders. She eased the door open, cool air slicing through her nerves. Halfway across the garden, she saw Tariq, duffel at his feet, phone in hand, glancing nervously at the street beyond the gate. He offered a whispered, urgent greeting. "We can catch the train to Manchester. My old friend will keep us until things calm. We'll figure out what to do from there." Samira wanted to believe him. The idea of freedom singed with possibility, even as it felt more like exile. Suddenly, the gate burst open. Imran stormed in, jacket twisted over his arm, face ashen and contorted in furious disbelief. Qasim followed, a quiet, hulking presence, glaring at Tariq with a look that held no forgiveness. Imran's voice cracked through the night. "You thought you could just run? After everything you've done to us?" Samira froze. Tariq positioned himself in front of her, stance defensive. "Imran, listen, please." But Imran wouldn't listen. He lunged, shoving his father back against the fence, hands balled into trembling fists. "You used my wife, my mother's trust, my children's home. How long did you think you could keep this hidden?" Tariq tried to steady his son. "It wasn't meant this way. I love her. I love her, Imran." Imran recoiled at the words, as if struck. For a moment, there was only the rain, the ragged breathing, the pulse of generational pain. Farah, alerted by the yelling, staggered into the rain. "Stop! Please stop, in Allah's name." In those final moments before disaster, every secret, every wound, hung in the storm-soaked air. Qasim, desperate to calm Imran, stepped forward, grabbing his shoulder. "Don't do this here. Come inside. Don't disgrace the family." But Imran was beyond reason, consumed by loss and betrayal, hands shaking with the urge for retribution that words could no longer satisfy. Samira squeezed her eyes shut, regret, anger, fear, and sorrow boiling into a single, shattering silent scream. All she could do was pray, the one ritual that, until this night, had always soothed her heart. As the rain abated, the garden was left in ruin. Footprints splayed beneath the tree, the bag dropped into wet grass, voices echoing far longer than the confrontation itself. That night, no one slept. Doors locked and unlocked, shadows toyed in every corner. Samira huddled on the floor beside her bed, trembling with exhaustion and terror, knowing whatever would happen next could never be reversed. In the silence that followed, new boundaries were drawn. The time for secrets was over. The next move will be fatal. The Hussein villa was shrouded in an anxious hush as dawn approached. The previous night's confrontation had shattered nearly every boundary in the house. Trust, loyalty, the very rhythm of family life. The garden, once a refuge, lay flooded, footprints embedded in muddy grass marking where secrets had finally surfaced and rage had threatened to explode into violence. Now, the silence was heavier than ever, punctuated only by the distant call to prayer and the restless shifting of bodies behind closed doors. Samira sat in the darkness of her bedroom, knees hugged to her chest, her small travel bag beside her. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Imran's face twisted in fury, Tariq's pleading voice, Farah sobbing in the rain. She pressed her hands together and prayed wordlessly for forgiveness and protection. But now even prayer felt empty, unable to fix the damage that years of longing and secrecy had wrought. Farah drifted through the house, her eyes swollen, hands trembling around the edge of her abaya. She had given up on sleep, instead preparing tea and pacing the hallway, calling out quietly for her children, needing to touch each one, needing, perhaps, to convince herself that the family wasn't yet entirely lost. For Imran, sleep had also been impossible. He alternated between pacing his office and sitting motionless at his desk, a set of keys clenched in his fist. Shame and rage tangled in his mind. He replayed the confrontation again and again. Samira's terrified face, his father's declaration of love for his wife, Qasim's restraint and Farah's pleading. Every memory stabbed deeper. The drive for retribution had mutated into full-blown obsession. Mid-morning arrived, damp and bleak. The children were kept upstairs, whispers of family emergency, and stern instructions to stay out of sight. Farah's eldest sister arrived, summoned before sunrise by panicked phone calls. She took over the kitchen, her presence a reminder of tradition and the wider eyes of the community. The family council began behind closed doors. Farah, her sister, and Qasim in search of a solution that might stave off public shame. Meanwhile, Imran plotted alone. He scoured the house for evidence: a phone charger left in the garden, Tariq's bank statements, Samira's missing jewelry, messages half deleted from Tariq's phone. Each clue made his rage sharper. Each confirmation of betrayal burned away remnants of mercy. Samira knew escape was now likely impossible. The house was under siege, both from its own secrets and the increasing surveillance of relatives drawn by crisis. Outside, cousins and uncles whispered in cars parked along the curb. Everyone knew something had happened, though gossip wildly outpaced fact. She tried again to talk to Tariq, catching him in the upstairs laundry room as the house briefly emptied for family prayers. His face was gray and drawn, lips pressed tight in fear. "We have to get out. Today," she whispered, voice trembling. "There's no way," Tariq replied, barely audible. "Imran is relentless. Security is everywhere. We can't risk dragging others down." Samira felt the finality in his voice. A man, once so confident, now cornered by fate and shame. Noon brought new humiliation. Imran called the family council together, gathering nearly a dozen relatives in the living room. Samira and Tariq forced to sit facing a tribunal of burning eyes. Farah's eldest sister led the questioning, voice icy. "You have betrayed not only Imran, but every one of us. Do you deny what has happened?" Tariq stared at the floor. Samira's voice barely registered. I am sorry. I never meant for." Imran interrupted, tone devoid of warmth. "Sorry changes nothing. Our honor is in ruins. My children don't deserve your secrets." Farah sobbed openly. Qasim watched with arms folded, measuring the tension in the air. Tempers boiled over. Tariq finally broke down, voice raw. "I'm to blame. Whatever the punishment, let it fall on me." Samira is young. She did not. But Samira interrupted, surprising everyone. Firm, almost defiant. "I'm not a child. I made choices. But you," she turned to Imran, "left me alone in this house. You never listened." The exchange turned violent in its energy, each sentence a slap in the face of what their family had always stood for. Imran stood, gesturing sharply at Tariq. "You are no father to me. You had destroyed everything." Outside, the sky had darkened again, a storm building over the city. Inside, the council reached an impasse. Some demanded immediate banishment. Others argued for silence. The hope that if the story never reached the mosque, honor could be salvaged, at least in appearance. After hours of shouting and weeping, Samira fled to her room, locked the door, and collapsed onto the floor. Tariq retreated to his study, trembling, replaying every step that brought him here. Farah clung to her prayer beads, calling out silent supplications for a miracle. Just after sunset, Imran snapped. He moved through the house with a controlled, terrifying calm, instructing Qasim and his uncle to lock the doors, take the children out of the villa, keep them safe. Imran retrieved an old cricket bat from the hallway cabinet, hands shaking, voice low and menacing. He cornered Tariq in the study. "You have no place here. You will pay for what you have done." Tariq tried to reason, tried to apologize one final time, but Imran raised the bat. The first blow landed with a sickening thud, Tariq dropping to his knees as pain exploded through his shoulder. Imran shouted, his anguish twisted into desperate violence. When Tariq tried to shield himself, Imran struck again, fueled by humiliation and years of longing for a family that, he now saw, had never been whole. Samira, hearing the chaos, rushed into the room, screaming, "Enough! Stop!" She stood between them, pleading, tears streaming down her face. Imran, blinded by fury and heartbreak, lashed out, striking her arm with the bat as she shielded Tariq. Farah, frantic, screamed for help, as Qasim and the uncle ran inside. The noise was deafening, the rage unstoppable. Furniture shattered, blows rained. The study transformed into a battleground of grief and regret. When the violence finally subsided, Tariq lay bleeding on the floor, Samira crumpled nearby, Farah sobbing uncontrollably as Qasim restrained Imran. A hush overtook the room, A moment of realization as the blood pooled, a family broken beyond repair. Sirens flashed within minutes, neighbors having finally called for help, unsure what was unfolding, but certain nothing good could come of so much chaos. Police entered, confusion reigning as Imran was led away, Qasim and Farah trying to explain between desperate breaths, paramedics tending to Tariq and Samira in the flickering lamplight. And so, as midnight settled in, the Hussein villa was transformed. The house of faith now a house of ruin, love and longing erased by violence, tradition consumed by the very secrets meant to protect it. The world outside would soon learn the truth. The family's fate now belonged to the courts, to neighbors, to whispers along the streets. The legend of a secret love that ended, as all forbidden stories do, in blood and heartbreak. But in the silence that followed, Farah pressed her hand to her heart and prayed for mercy. A mother mourning not only her honor, but the destruction of everything she once believed unbreakable. Morning crept slowly over the battered Hussein villa, but inside, the devastation of the previous night had settled in every corner like ash. The sound of police radios, paramedics' hurried footsteps, and hushed voices of neighbors in the street formed the new, uneasy background of the family's reality. Samira sat on the edge of a hospital bed, her arms stiff in a cast, mind adrift between guilt and numbness. She replayed the violence. Imran's face contorted by grief and rage, Tariq's body crumpled, Farah sobbing and helpless, and felt the ache of consequences she couldn't yet face fully. Each time she closed her eyes, she remembered words thrown like knives and the way her own actions had set everything in motion. She remained painfully aware that, for her children and herself, life would never return to what it was. Tariq survived, but barely. In a separate ward, he opened and closed his eyes to fragmented images. Samira's tears, Imran's shouts, Farah retreating into prayer. Nurses spoke quietly around him, but the dignity he had guarded for a lifetime was gone. Shame and exhaustion weighed on him more than his wounds. Imran, still shaken, emerged from police questioning to find that the world outside his family had already started whispering. Friends messaged their support, but kept their distance. The villa itself, once a fortress for pride and tradition, felt hollow, every room a memory of something irrevocably lost. Farah, the family's center, wandered the corridors of the hospital and later the living room, her eyes rimmed red from sleeplessness. She was consumed by questions. How had a house she built on faith and discipline imploded so completely? How could honor be rebuilt after such a public shaming? In the days that followed, the police investigation pieced together the story. Secret messages, heated confrontations, the ties between betrayal and violence. News drifted through the mosque and marketplace, neighbors growing suddenly silent when a Hussein walked by. Lawyers talked of plea deals and reconciliation, but no verdict could offer real closure. The wider family scattered temporarily, children sent to a cousin's home, sisters and aunts taking turns to help with care and logistics. The villa became quieter than ever. Old photos tucked away, family meetings replaced with tense, practical decision-making. Online, the scandal became a cautionary tale about tradition, temptation, and the limits of forgiveness. Yet even as the paperwork stacked up and court dates approached, nothing truly ended for those inside the Hussein circle. Samira, now living in a rented flat nearby, tried for normalcy but found herself walking past the old villa on sleepless nights, pausing beneath the almond tree. Sometimes she caught herself imagining a life where secrets didn't bury love, or where a simple apology could mend years of pain. Imran stayed away. He sold his share of the family business and found new work, one step removed from the gossip and reminders that shadowed him. For him, every new beginning felt fragile, haunted by ghosts he couldn't shake. Farah, finally, began to emerge, quietly holding her children close, finding strength in community prayers, accepting that rebuilding would be slow. She visited Samira sometimes, their words tentative but less bitter, both searching for peace rather than answers. Occasionally, she wrote to Tariq, sending news of grandchildren, hoping time might soften, if not heal, the past. The villa itself was sold. Its walls were painted, rooms rearranged, as if erasing what had happened inside. But for the Hussein family, the echo lingered, not just of violence, but of a love that had tested every tradition, and the heartbreak that comes when truth can't be hidden or simply forgiven. And so their story ended, less with resolution, more with the heavy silence of what remains. Across the new and scattered homes, each member carried their own regret and longing. The lines between victim and villain, faith and desire, punishment and redemption blurred in memory. But life, as it always does, pressed forward. The children grew, the wounds slowly closed, and hope returned in small moments. A shared prayer, a gentle kindness, the knowledge that even beneath the worst shame, family is sometimes rebuilt in the quiet after tragedy.